I understand that you're writing a family history. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, I am writing a book, and it's called Extraordinary Lives of Ordinary People. And it starts with my mother and father, and then their mothers and fathers, and then their mothers and fathers, and it goes all the way back to the 1700s. So I think it would be interesting to everybody connected to the Zimmermann family. Well, my father's name was John Antony Zimmermann, and he was named after his grandfather, who was Philip Antony, who I will speak about later. My father grew up on Constance and Josephine Street in New Orleans, right across the street from the German Catholic Church, St. Mary's Assumption. He went to grammar school at Redemptorist Grammar School, then Jesuit High School, then attended Loyola University until the First World War started. When the war started, he was drafted into the Army, but luckily only spent 90 days in the Army because the war ended. After he got out of the Army, he went to work in Zimmermann Building Services, which was the family business. Unfortunately, he and his brother had some misunderstanding, and at one time they each went their own ways in different businesses. In the 20s and late and early 30s, my father worked in several different jobs. He was a banker, and finally, right before the Depression killed his business, he had opened up a hardware store on Lopez Street with G. Gurnan Brown as a partner. Brown went on to be the head coach of Jesuit High School football team from 1933 until 1953, a very long, illustrious career. My father also was the assistant superintendent of the National Youth Administration, which led to his job as state director of WPA for recreation in Louisiana. In that job, he supervised over 300 recreational projects within the state of Louisiana. Many times, as his children, we attended summer camps. And of course, if we went to a girls' summer camp, I went too, because I was the baby. And Stella went along with us to make sure I was okay. After that, Daddy went to work as the director for the USO started out with 7 southern states and ended up with 11 southern states. And I can vividly remember going out to the old Shushan Airport on the lakefront and watching Daddy fly off in an old DC-3, which at that time was the choice commercial airliner. Daddy, after USO, went to work doing fundraising and worked for the United Fund for many years. And after that, when he retired, he did freelance fundraising and raised funds for many different things, including a Jewish synagogue, the Heart Fund, the National United Negro College Fund, and St. Lawrence de Martyr School out in Jefferson. And finally, his last job was to raise money to build the Hotel Dieu Hospital, which is now part of the LSU system. Daddy married Mimi after my mother passed away. Aunt Mary will tell about that. Mimi and Daddy got married in 1945. I was 9 years old. I turned 10 that November. Mimi was my mother for 65 years, and she loved me and I loved her. And basically, Daddy died in 1982, 3 weeks after Brenda and I got married.
Can you tell us a little about your grandfather?
Yes, I can. Joseph Ambrose Zimmermann was the son of Ambrose Zimmermann, who lived in Texas. When my grandfather came to New Orleans, he was a lay brother in the Christian Brotherhood. He first taught school for the St. Aloysius Christian School, and then left the Brotherhood to marry my grandmother, Teresa Antoni. They had 7 children, or actually they had 8 children, but the first child, Joseph, died at 4 years old. I don't know that much about the Zimmermann family in Texas, except that I know that one of our relatives was hung from a tree, and also one of them married a woman, and the marriage didn't last long, so he put her on a horse and sent her home. I guess that was divorce, Wild West style.
And can you tell us about your grandmother, Teresa Antoni?
Teresa Antoni was the daughter of Philip Antoni. She had three sisters, Mary Antoni, Marguerite Antoni, and Annie Antoni. Mary Antoni married a man from New York named Kraft Miller. Her father was Philip Antoni, who came from Bechtheim in Germany around 1848. Went to New York City. From New York City, he came to New Orleans. When he got in New Orleans, he opened up a religious store on the corner of Phillips on Josephine and Constant Street, right across the street from basically three Catholic churches. What a great place to have a religious store. It was St. Alphonsus for the Irish, St. Mary's for the Catholics, for the German Catholics, and Notre Dame for the French Catholics. Philip Antoni's most outstanding thing he did was actually two things. One thing was that in the steeple of St. Mary's Church, there is a four-faced clock, which no jewelers in the city could figure out how to make it run on one mechanism, and Philip Antoni did. He also carved some of the statues and the pulpit inside of the church. He was a woodcarver in Germany. And the last thing he did that he probably is most notable for was to nurse Father Francis Xavier Seelos when he was dying of yellow fever. I think Philip Antoni may be the first miracle Father Seelos interceded for, since my great-grandfather caught the yellow fever but lived till 1908.
And now, can you tell us about the ancestors of your mother, Agnes Louise Landry Zimmermann?
Yes, I have spent hours and hours researching the Daigle and Landry families. Her mother was Marie Ophelia Daigle, and her father's name was Romain Daigle. And she had a brother named Alcide Daigle, who owned the Laurel Ridge plantation right out of White Castle, Louisiana. Actually, if it wasn't for the Civil War, we'd probably all be rich landowners right now. Landrys were very powerful. If you look back in the early 1700s, 1800s, the Mississippi River up and down the left and right side of the Mississippi River was loaded with plantations owned by one or more of the Landry family. The Daigles I don't know very much about, other than they were from the Iberville Parish, White Castle area, and Alcide did own the Laurel Ridge plantation, which is still in White Castle and being operated at the present time by Landrys. The interesting thing is that the Landry family goes all the way back to the 1700s when they migrated here from Acadie in Nova Scotia. The first Landry to come here was Abraham Landry. His son was Joseph Landry. Joseph's son was Guillaume Raphael Landry. His son was Augustine Valerie Landry, and his son was Auguste Darcini Landry, who was my great-grandfather. He had sons named Sidney V. Landry and Robert Darcini Landry, who were brothers. An interesting fact about Robert Darcini Landry, he had a son named Hippolyte Theophile Landry, who also had a son named Hippolyte Theophile Landry Jr. His claim to fame and extraordinary feat was that he flew around the world solo in a Beechcraft Bonanza. He followed the same flight path from here to Paris as Charles Lindbergh. My mother and her sister, Aloysia, who we called Aunt Babe, attended Dominican High School because Grandpa's wife had died, and she was Marie Ophelia Daigle Landry. The Daigles married Landrys, and the Landrys married Daigles, and the Daigles married O'Quins, and the O'Quins married Daigles, and the O'Quins married Guillots, and the Guillots married O'Quins, and it went on like that for hundreds of years.
What did your grandfather's brother do for a living?
My grandfather and Robert, I think, ran a Landry grocery store in White Castle, and that's where my grandfather, Sidney V. Landry, got a job working for Cudahy Meat Company, traveling all around South Louisiana because he spoke French and he could sell to all the small grocers that spoke French in South Louisiana. He then got a job working for managing a market in New Orleans for an absentee owner, and that one went out. And then he opened up a series of small grocery stores of his own, ending up the last one, which I went to many times as a child with Stella, that was on the corner of Bowdoin and South Hennessy. And that's a little bit about the Landrys.
Do you have any closing comments?
Yes, I've just given everybody a snippet of the family history. I'll be here for the rest of the day, so if you want to ask any specific questions, just come on up and I'll be glad to talk to you. Or you can wait until my book is published on Amazon.com and buy one for yourself for $29.95. Then you'll have it all your own.